today I was describing what storage was and the growth in storage density to my 10-year-old. And I was trying to figure out an analogy of trying to explain to him why data is growing. It's something as simple to understand for everyone as being able to take pictures at a higher density or a higher bit rate on your phone.
You bring up an interesting point. In storage, they've got this thing called Kreider's law, a corollary to Moore's law. Kreider's law says that the density of storage doubles every 13 months. Except over the last decade, Kreider's law has kind of like tailed off. We're at about 16% growth a year, which is nowhere near what it was back in the good old days. It's one of the reasons that is forcing us to look at alternate methods of storing data. Now, DNA is awesome, right? I mean, it's got all these great, wonderful things, but there are some big challenges. The throughput right now is we're like in the 9600 baud modem era. For those of you who don't know what a 9600 baud modem is, you're just going to have to go and Google it and be amazed that the human beings that had to use these invented space travel and digital computers and the internet. It's amazing we got anything done at all. The other thing is noise. I mentioned this earlier. Whenever you're making big, long strands of DNA, even as living organisms, errors pop in. And I think that when you take a look at DNA, it is not as binary 1 or 0 as binary. There are some mutations that creep in. Therefore, you have to put a bunch of, think about it as biological parity bits that you got to stick in there to make sure that the noise is accounted for. Cost. This stuff costs an arm and a leg, even more than synthetic meat right now, right? This stuff is super, super expensive. Another problem, DNA is meant to be accessed in one of two ways, either all at once, like mitosis, where you have a DNA strand that separates itself and then wham, it just picks up all of the amino acids and proteins it needs to replicate the whole megillah, or sequentially, one by one by one by one by one. One is super fast, but you get everything. One is super slow, but you get what you want. This makes random access, stuff like searching, going to the letter M in the Encyclopedia Britannica. That makes that a little bit problematic.
I think that there is a lot of cause for optimism here because we're seeing great economically viable use cases for these techniques. And again, I want to come back to this notion of uptake of mRNA vaccines. So mRNA isn't just for COVID vaccines. It could be used for anything that you want your body to do differently. And there's a lot of promise for that. So there's a lot of likely economic benefit from doing it, which means there's a lot of likely research into how to get things printed, the substrates used, the way to move it around, everything else. And so I think we'll see a lot of good uptake in it.
Yeah. Absolutely the case. So wait a minute, you're saying there's still a chance for me to make it into the NBA?
I think there is, Mark. I think there is.
The dream's gonna happen.
With that twinkle in your eye, nothing's impossible.
You know it. You know it. You know it.